This is the cheapest iPad you can buy in 2025, and after using it day to day for the last week and testing everything from note-taking to media consumption to gaming, I think it's the best iPad for students and most casual users. In fact, I think it might be the best value Apple product on the market today. But there are some limitations compared to other iPads in the Apple ecosystem at this lower price point, so be sure to keep on watching to get my full thoughts. And if you're new here, my name is Aaron and I make tech videos from the perspective of a daily user, not a tech reviewer, so if you want to see more content like this, be sure to drop a like and subscribe. Alright, so I have the cheapest base model iPad here that comes with 128 gigs of storage, which is already pretty crazy to say out loud because I remember just a few years ago I had the base model iPad 8 that only came with 32 gigs of storage. And even with all the inflation since then, this iPad is still starting at just $349 in the US or $329 with the education discount, and let me tell you why that's actually an insane deal. Starting off with the build quality, this has the exact same build as the 10th gen iPad from 2022, except the screen is now 0.1 inches larger to be exactly 11 inches instead of 10.9 inches. The all aluminum and glass design still feels really premium and identical to the new iPad Air, just slightly thicker and with wider bezels, but if they aren't side by side and you're not looking for it, you probably wouldn't notice. Besides that, this iPad actually shares a lot in common with the new iPad Air, from the exact same cameras to the same speakers to the same Touch ID power button, which all works as well as you would expect to on a premium tablet. But let's start with the displays, because this is one area where a lot of tech reviewers have had divided opinions. So this iPad has an 11-inch Liquid Retina display that's really sharp for watching videos, browsing social media, or just reading and web browsing, and actually has the exact same resolution as the iPad Air and Pro, which both cost way more than this device at 264 ppi. The colors are slightly less vibrant than the iPad Air and the iPad Pro because this doesn't support the P3 color spectrum, but honestly the entertainment experience on this iPad is still really great and I don't think most people would notice or care. The display also gets up to 500 nits of brightness just like the new iPad Air, and unfortunately has the same 60Hz refresh rate. I know I talk a lot about the refresh rate in my videos because it is something that bothers me, especially because most of my other devices are at a higher refresh rate, but as I always say, for most casual users or students, it might not be a deal breaker depending on what you're using this iPad for, or if you're coming from an older device and you don't have that side-by-side comparison. But the main point that most people have been talking about is that this iPad's display is still not fully laminated, meaning there's a small air gap between the display itself and the glass on top. What this means in practice is that writing or drawing on this iPad won't feel as immersive as the iPad Air or Pro because you might feel like there's a gap between your stylus and the display itself. But honestly, I used an iPad just like this throughout university myself, and it's not a big deal if you're just taking lecture notes or doing simple drawings. It might be a bigger problem for artists who need that extra precision, but to be honest, they shouldn't even be considering this iPad since it's the only iPad in 2025 that doesn't support the new Apple Pencil Pro. And I'll talk more about why the Apple Pencil Pro is such a great upgrade in my long-term iPad Pro review, but honestly, you'll just be missing out on features like the hover and squeeze function, which are more nice to haves and not the most important thing for a student or a casual user. But if you are buying this iPad, value for price is probably one of the more important factors. And the sponsor of today's video, ESR, has some really high quality accessories that I would recommend over Apple's own accessories for less than half the price. Instead of the $80 Apple Pencil USB-C, ESR's Geo Digital Pencil is a budget-friendly alternative you can pick up for just $30. It writes smoothly with tilt sensitivity just like the Apple Pencil, but my favorite part is that it can connect to Apple's Find My app if you misplace your pencil, and you can also see the real-time battery display. But my favorite accessory from ESR is probably this flip magnetic case, which is a high-quality cover case for the iPad 11 that has a built-in magnetic support stand for watching content at multiple angles or elevating the iPad for note-taking and drawing. And the coolest part is this fold opens up here so you can also throw the iPad into vertical mode for scrolling on TikTok, and it also comes with this built-in stylus holder, and again, this case is so affordable, starting at just $23. And lastly, I always use a screen protector on my iPad, and ESR's Ultra Fit screen protector is probably the easiest screen protector I've ever installed on an iPad. I literally thought I messed up because it was so easy to put on, and it keeps the screen super clear for watching videos, and it still maintains the full pencil writing functionality. ESR was also just named a Fast Company's Most Innovative Companies list in 2025. Be sure to check out ESR's products in the description below if you're looking to pick up some high quality and affordable accessories for your new iPad. Alright, now let's talk about performance on this base model iPad, which is actually rocking Apple's A16 Bionic chip from back in 2022. But don't worry, it's more powerful than it sounds, and swiping around and opening apps feels snappy thanks to the upgraded 6GB of RAM, which is actually 50% more than the iPad 10th generation, and it lets it handle things like multitasking and the occasional photo and video editing when you need it to. Thanks to iPadOS 18, you also get some solid multitasking features and of course all the customization features, which I still don't really use too much. And if you have a MacBook, you can also use this as a second monitor, which is pretty clutch. Gaming also feels pretty decent on this iPad, with most of the games I play running smoothly, although it isn't the best gaming experience if you're used to a higher refresh rate screen. But given this doesn't have an M series chip like the iPad Air or the iPad Pro, you shouldn't expect to do any heavier pro level work on this iPad, like working with larger files or 4K video editing. You also can't download more demanding console games on this iPad like Assassin's Creed Mirage, and this iPad won't ever support Apple Intelligence features, which might not be a big problem today, but could be a bigger deal in the future. So whether all of these performance performance trade-offs are worth it really comes down to what you're using an iPad for. If it's just simple tablet work like taking notes, reading, and watching content, this will get you 90% of the value for a third of the price of the iPad Pro and $250 less than the iPad Air. And now that this base model comes with 128 gigs of storage, that's honestly more than enough for most students looking for a tablet to simply take notes with, and for most casual users who need to occasionally save photos or other files on their iPad. I don't want to get into too many boring details, but you get a really well-rounded core iPad experience even with a $349 iPad in 2025. Everything above this is honestly paying for premium features that make the experience marginally better, unless you fall into a specific group of people that need the Pro features like the faster data transfer or support for the Apple Pencil Pro. But for most students and casual users, this iPad is the perfect, good enough pick for 2025. It's nothing revolutionary, but the small changes like the new A16 chip and the 128 gigs of storage give this base model iPad the much needed longevity to last into the future. Anyways, that's about it for my thoughts on the 2025 iPad A16, or whatever you call this iPad. Let me know if you have any questions or thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys very soon in the next one.